audio video, joined by Ben Goff of Cinema Buro. And we're going to be talking today about our favorite speakers. And as Ben believes, it may not be what you think. But we're also going to talk about why. We'll talk about some things that you can get away with, maybe a little bit more in home theater than you can in a 2-channel environment. And we'll go from there. But the first part of this that I want to talk about, I want to learn about from Ben what the first speaker was that really spoke to him, that resonated with you, that said, I need this in my life. Because I feel like there are those speakers for people. I have this. This is amazing. Not the room, not anything. You could put that thing in any room and you'd be happy.
I didn't know this question was coming. That's
that's good.
You've caught me right off guard.
Genuine.
I don't know.
response.
I mean, it will have changed massively as I know more.
First one.
Expectations change. I don't know. I mean, I bought my first multi-channel system when I was 14, maybe 15 years old. They've gone more and more upmarket. They've now got a custom install division. They do really high-end stuff. They serve royalty. You know, they've become like an institution in the UK. It's probably the most famous hi-fi store in the UK by miles.
Okay.
So, hey, I was young. I knew no better. And they had a lot of their own brands. They bought brands that they then were failing, I guess, or, you know, in the later years of their life, and just made them incredibly good value. So the first proper system I bought was a brand called Gale. And I don't know where they sit on a global stage.
Worked, what it was doing. The speaker was totally different. I'd always had the mindset, or I guess personality, of being a little bit different. Not,
right,
you know, being a weirdo, just liking different things. Hold on. Pepper, you got to go upstairs. You can't be down here. We got a new dog, and she went underneath the gate, and she's down here like, hey, what's up?
I'm here. I was like, is that a dog or a really big cat? Like,
it is a dog. Her name's Pepper. She's an Alaskan Klekai mix, so she's just investigating. Hopefully she doesn't pee down here, but we'll find out, because we don't let our dogs down here, but she got underneath the gate. Anyway, it was Martin Logan Electrostatics. I'm going to say the Arius, but it didn't really matter what it was. It was any Martin Logan Electrostatic. I didn't own it. They were far too expensive for, me and my menial non-existent pay. I mean, I think at that point I was making.
So now you said
the biggest
I know
emotional
the first speaker I
attachment
lost it after.
Yes.
The first thing that was like the kind of speaker I'd put up a poster on my wall, like the first thing I wanted but was never going to buy. And they would have been either Kef Reference, which were way above what I would have spent at the time, or their Q series, the marketing and aspiration that before you know much more, when you get into a hobby, and the same will be true of cars and watches, right? And all these things, there will be something that you find aspirational. I grew up 20 miles-ish from Bowers and Wilkins factory. The Kef factory would have been, an hour or two from me. But the British brands at the time, we had Name, Cyrus, Arkham, Musical Fidelity. British hi-fi was a big deal. There was in my late teens, early 20s, looking beyond British hi-fi, why would you? We've got the best hi-fi in the world. Why would you ever look beyond British? And I'm sure you would have exactly the same thought of American, and German listeners will be here going, why would I buy anything by Canton? I think you very quickly, I think when you're new to a hobby, the homegrown stuff's got a special place in your heart. I'm sure of it.
It does. Now, aside from the homegrown, let's actually go down into something that our listeners will appreciate. And let's talk about what your favorite speaker is at a budget, a kind of moderate price range, and then any price level. So now, what would you recommend for people? And I'm saying a universal speaker. But before we get into that, I think it's important, because I mentioned this at the beginning. And sorry, I got to pet my dog, so I'm a little worried she's going to do something down here. Um, there is, and this is something that I don't think a lot of people think about. A speaker can get away with not being as truly outstanding in a home theater environment, I feel like more so than it can in a two-channel environment. Would you agree with that statement?
Maybe. But right, this is difficult because, hey, you picked this topic and
I
I
know.
have
I'm
researched
making this
it,
up
right?
as I go too.
So,
This is a
so
very
here's the
impromptu
thing.
topic.
I would say in a home cinema, home theater, you've got more channels
Mhm,
active at any one time. You've got more things happening.
mhm,
You've got a picture that will distract you. Potentially, the requirement for quality of any one component is a bit lower because, hey, you're spreading the budget out onto screen, projector, display, speakers, processor, subs. You are spreading yourself thinner. And I think you get away with that. If it's just you, two speakers, a really purist amplifier, and a source device,
mhm,
you focus on every detail in that very small system. So
mhm.
I think we can get away with speakers that maybe aren't as high fidelity. But what you won't get away with is a speaker that lacks dynamic range. Now,
Yes, I'd
right, if
agree.
I listen to music at home, I will listen to it maybe 10, 20 dB lower than
Lame.
what I might listen to. Like, I'm just talking normal music, right? I'm just sitting listening to something, right? Probably way quieter in my home than what I listen to in this cinema.
Mhm.
If I'm putting some EDM on, all right, I've got Max Cooper on, I'm gonna jazz it up, but probably not the same levels that I listen to Blade Runner 2049.
Mhm.
Maybe not, right? So I probably have more of a focus on fidelity for two channel than I would dynamic range for cinema.
So,
Um,
I'm gonna come at that a little bit more demandingly in that my two-channel, I listen loud, and I need kinda what you said you needed from home theater, which you need the dynamic range, which dynamic range does not necessarily mean loud. It just means the ability to play and not mask something that's quiet, and the ability to play things and not mask or compress things that are upper and SPL. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get loud, but it does help. So I'm asking a two-channel system to do both. And to me, because it has to do both, it's just a lot more you're asking a lot more of the speaker. Like,
yeah,
in a multi-channel environment, I can hide things through multiple channels. Your brain can't focus on things, or it can't, um, you know, pick up all the minutia that you may be able to focus on in a two-channel environment because there's just more going on. You're gonna get overwhelmed. Um, and guys, sorry about the dog. I really don't want her to pee somewhere in the basement. She's not supposed to be here, so I'm like, I'll just pick you up and you can be my captive. You can't go anywhere. Um, so I think to me, in the environment and use case that I use it, a two-channel speaker's more I'm gonna ask more of it, and it's gonna be able to get away with less because I'm gonna be able to pick up all of those details. So, for you, back to the question, on an entry-level budget, and I'm not gonna establish an actual budget, I want you to come up with just give me what you would put the minimum that you would be happy with, and that doesn't mean that it's a
oh,
bad speaker.
oh
What
god,
would it
that's
be?
unfair. Right. So what is the minimum I would listen to in my own home?
Yes.
Honestly, that's a really terrible thing for me to admit to in person because the most used speaker in my house is an Amazon Echo Dot. So that's terrible. But the
You heard it
reason for
here
that
first,
is,
ladies and gentlemen. That's actually what Ben does in all of his cinemas that he designs. They're actually just Amazon dot echoes behind all of
right,
the
but
acoustic
that is
channels.
the most used speaker in my house because the kids have one in each bedroom. We've got one in the
Mhm.
dining room. We've got one in the kitchen. And the kids speak to them and just put things on. Like my wife yesterday just said, like, Alexa, play some chill jazz, and it played all day. Like one day I will put a proper system in our house. Like, we've not renovated our house. I will put some proper ceiling speakers and stuff in. But in the absence of them, my wife will listen to background music on it all day, and she doesn't care. Like, and I don't care enough to go and turn it off. So there's the reality. Would I actively listen to that? Of course not. So
Let's
here's the
curtail
difference
that and say
of right,
actively listen
background
to.
music to active. And then a big divider for me is going to be the visual appeal of a speaker. So when I'm doing a theater, I almost never see the speakers. So I kind of even want them to be the cheapest looking plain
Little
black
bit ugly.
box. So am I happy building cinemas with Ascendo Pro 6s? Sure, right? They do what I need. They're compact. I can hide them. They're low cost. That to me is a low cost entry level speaker. And we are already not cheap, right? We're cheap for my world. But they're still what, $600-700 a piece?
No, they're more than that's the 5.
Right. Okay. So we're already not in low cost speakers. That's kind of the entry level of what I would be using in projects we do. If I was building a little system for myself in my own living room, I'd be more than happy with those.
But you're saying you'd want, typically in your own living room, you'd want something a little more aesthetic.
Yeah, I would not put Pro 6s in my living room, because where I'd want them working around the kids, I probably need a stand mount I can put somewhere, or a floor stander that I can get in the right place that I know will stand up to them. Like, what do I really want in my house? Let's start there. Let's work from there and explain why. A pair of Police S4Bs, right? That's what I would actually, if I was going out tomorrow to buy a pair of speakers, that's what I'd buy.
Now, why do the Ascendo 6s, what do they accomplish for you that makes you want to do that or use them? I know they're not aesthetics. You're not going to use them in your house, but why do you say that they work well? And we are naming brands here. We're not going to talk negatively about any brands, but why do you say they would work well in any of your projects, or at least in the smaller room projects?
Like, bang for buck, you're getting a lot of output that's well behaved. I know what that speaker's going to do in a room. The coaxial design is, it's a well documented. We've used enough coaxial speakers over years to know what that product's going to do. I have the data for it. I know the output from it. The form factor works for me. The cost works for me. It's an easy speaker for me to put into a entry level theater design. It's not the highest fidelity, right? You wouldn't compare it to a Kef Meta, whatever. What are these things you've got in your basement? What Kefs have you got?
Blades. Well, I've got the blades,
okay.
and then some Metas and some other stuff.
So they're not comparable, right? It's not in that league of performance or price or aesthetics. So here's the thing for me for a hi-fi speaker, and where I would still be more comfortable buying a hi-fi speaker without data than I would a theater speaker without data. So think about how you build a 2-channel room versus how you build a theater. When we build a theater, I've got to plan where those speakers are going to go before I assemble anything. Right? I can't go out to the shop, borrow a whole set of speakers, take them, put them in the room, a full multi-channel with Atmos. I can't put the whole thing in, do a full calibration. Does it work? Not really. It's not doing it for me. Go and get an entirely new set, right? So when I design a theater, it's got to be predictable. It's got to be planned, and you build it once. You build it knowing it will work. If I'm doing a 2-channel room for myself, I could go out to a hi-fi store and borrow 3 or 4 or 5 pairs of speakers. I've got flexibility about where I place them. How far do I bring them off the wall, right? Do I need to make them a bit wider, a bit narrower? Do I toe them in more or less? I can experiment with all of that in the room. I can just fiddle for a week until I get the best out of them in my room. But I can't do that with a theatre, because even adjusting toe in of your left and right, then we're looking at what? The toe in of the wides, the toe in of the surrounds. It's not realistic to go out and test multiple speakers. So I have to know what they'll do in advance. With a pair of hi-fi speakers, what is the real risk, right? I borrow a pair. I don't like what they do in my room. I take them back. I get something else. I think the barrier to entry and the risk you take on a 2-channel room, almost nothing. In a theatre, the exact opposite. You've got to know it's going to work from day one, because it's a real pain to do it 2 or 3 or 4 times. So I might be tempted to buy 2-channel speakers based on how pretty I think they are. I'm saying might. I'm not being entirely, slightly facetious, but
you said at the beginning of this that the aesthetic is important.
Yeah. I think a 2-channel pair of speakers in my living room, I want them to be as much a piece of sculpture or art as they are a speaker. I don't care. In a cinema, I am hiding them. I don't want to see them. I am actively not wanting to see them. I do not like speakers on show in a theater at all.
Yeah.
I actively want them hidden. So the requirements I've got are totally different.
All right. I'm going to go put my dog upstairs because I'm a little worried she's going to do something. While I do that, what speaker would you put, as she's doing laps now, what speaker would you put in your living room, general purpose, under $1,000? Be right back.
Oh, this is hard. Under $1,000. I don't. Right. This is really embarrassing and shows how out of touch I am with reality. I'm not entirely sure I know what you can buy for under $1,000. I'm now going to have to live Google what I can buy for under $1,000. Can I get a pair of Kef LS50s for under that? Because I don't know. I've got honestly no idea. Kef LS50s, how much are they? Oh, £1,300, right? So they're what? $1,500? So I've already failed. Okay, that's gone badly. I definitely can't get any per listens for under $1,000, so that's not going to happen. Okay, right. I reckon I can find something. Do PMC make anything for under $1,000? Probably not, do they? That's probably not going to happen. Home audio. Yeah, I think we can already just see this isn't going to happen. They're not going to. Prodigy ones. I'm not even sure I've heard the Prodigy ones, but we've got a chance. Right, how much are they? I reckon they're going to be well out of my budget. This is going to be difficult because I don't honestly know that many speakers under $1,000. Right, can I just turn my live chat thing on? I'm not looking at chat. No one's helping me. Oh, here we go. Somebody tell me what I can buy for under $1,000. Because the PMCs are about the same money as the Kefs. £1,250 a pair. So like $1,500+. Ryan, I'm stuck. I've looked up 2 and they were both more than $1,000. So I'm struggling. I've looked at, oh, he hasn't got his headphones on. You can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, I've looked at 2 speakers. Both of them came out at more money. So I still haven't even found a speaker that I know that is under $1,000. I looked at some Kef LS50s. But they're great, right? They're not expensive, but they're what, $1,500?
Kef Concerto is what I do. Yeah, but the LS50s are $1,500 for a pair, so that would fit.
Oh, okay, right. You were giving me $1,000 a piece. Oh, okay, right. I mean, I don't know the KEF range that well, but I'm probably going to end up with some. What's the cheapest per listens I can buy?
A series.
No, what's the new ones that just came out? What are they called?
X.
Yeah. Oh, can you get a little pair of per listen X series on a wall for that money?
I can
We
tell you
might be
in a
able to get into
second.
per listen for that kind of money now.
I don't
An
know.
X3?
I think I'd be happy with a lot of different speakers at that price range. Now, I'm gonna put this disclaimer in there that I'm a little jaded, right? I've used a lot of speakers. I've been exposed to a lot of speakers. Doing this professionally, my wiggle room from what I would be happy dealing with, I'm a little less tolerant of that. So my expectations for a speaker, I'm unwilling to deal with just because I've heard so many, I've been around them, I've listened to a lot for a long time. So my expectation is what I would actually use in my room is going to be further up. What speakers that I like for this price point, that maybe I'd have in my living room as not critical listening, but TV, have 2 channel on in the background. I could, sit there and listen to for a while, but not like get goosebumps or anything from. Partly because of the room. I can list a few. Uh, at the more budget focused end, I've got something like the Kef Concerto.
Yeah. Okay.
Neutral. They've got a little wiggle up at the top. They are a um, coaxial with an extra woofer. I think they're right around a little less than $1,500 a pair, which is, I think they're actually $1,400 a pair, which is a fantastic price. And the cabinet is really well manufactured. It's a pretty speaker.
So how worried are you about having data for a speaker at that price point if you're using it for 2 channel?
I want to know what the speaker's doing. I'm not
Okay.
necessarily concerned about it being flat
Right. Okay.
because the room that it's in, and I'm putting these in my room, the room that it's in the living room, untreated, 20-foot ceilings. It's open into the kitchen. It's not a great acoustic room. So I'm not really concerned about it. Um, Kef Concertos are great. Even the Kef Q1s are even cheaper. I mean, I think their MSRP is $700 for a pair. So for entry level, I'm calling that entry level. I don't know that I would go any cheaper than that. They are fantastic speakers. You're gonna run out of gas. Like, the speakers are gonna
Right.
run into a wall. They don't have the output that you're gonna get from home theater or something, but, um, you mentioned the X series, solid. A speaker that I know does not measure flat at all that I really enjoy, Martin Logan B100.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. It's not flat at all in the slightest, but I really enjoy how it sounds. The faux detail that it brings from the increase in high frequency SPL is great. And I actually think Aaron's measured these. We can actually look at those. Let's look at that. And let's pull it apart.
I
I
mean, I'm
do
having to
like
look up what they are.
the Martin Logan B100s. They're little bookshelves.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I'm having to look them up. Okay. Yeah. Right. I
let me
may have heard those actually.
you may have heard them at an expo.
Yeah.
Windows.
So, like, and here's the thing for me, right? That is a very easy speaker to shift around
Mhm.
and find how it's going to work best.
I mean, look at the
So,
Spinorama.
yeah,
Not
right.
great. Not
No,
great.
and the challenge would be if you're using a 2 channel preamp that you don't have any tone control. Well, actually, hey,
Mhm.
that's fine. I'm just looking at that, right? That looks like a speaker that is going to be just fine if you don't toe it in at all. If you just send that
Uh,
straight down the room, you're probably going to get an okay response on that. That looks
Yeah,
like
your ears being off axis. Yes. Yeah.
you're probably going to want to get some kind of control on the sidewalls for some reflections, but that
They're actually more narrow, so they're not as wide of a dispersion, so limiting side reflections is not bad, but
yeah,
this
but if
is a
you point
great.
them straight down the wall, you're still sending some energy off to
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this goes back to your point of saying you're gonna wanna play with things in your room to get an experience that is what you'd want, and that is here, you can tame this to some extent by playing with toe angle. If and you can look at that by does he have this? Here. You can see that in the off-axis response. So we can see in the on-axis that this speaker is considerably bright. But
yeah.
as we move off-axis, and this is what Ben was saying with just pointing the speaker straight into the room instead of towing it in, the response actually becomes more neutral. So can I zoom in on this? There we go. So if we look at it's still bright. Like, don't get me wrong. It's still a bright speaker. If we look at 30 degrees off axis, which is right here, instead of it just being fully bright, we're bright at, where are we? 2003, like 4,000 hertz. And then we're back into something that's closer to neutral. So you can certainly play with this. Um, I've always just liked the way they sound. I subjectively, they're not an objective speaker, but I've liked the way they sound.
Now, as a speaker that's imperfect, I'm not going to claim there's such thing as a perfect speaker, but we can look at that and see that's
Before we go into that, I want
imperfect.
to bring up that what is perfect is entirely needs to be defined by what your expectation is. Right?
Right.
If you're
But
chasing something, a perfect speaker to me is what allows you to obtain that result as a tool. And some people will argue that this is perfect. This is, based on research. And that's what I have found that I like. I like a neutral speaker in my home theater and stuff like that. But I can't say that that's going to go down for everybody.
right. And so I think part of this is content. Like let's say you've put a pair of these in your room. What are you predominantly listening to on them?
Music.
Like what music? What genre do you
Everything.
So if I had unlimited money, I would build multiple, like unlimited money. I'd have 10 different hi-fis in 10 different rooms. And they to some extent be genre specific. Right? I would have a big pair of horns, something like an avant-garde acoustic, like which one I go with, but some big sculptural takes up half the room, a huge, great big horn. I wouldn't listen to everything on it. When I'm listening to something orchestral, something that demands very naturalness, like that, comfortable at 1 watt of power, it's just effortless, but a huge sense of scale.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I wouldn't listen to rock on them. Like that would be a different room with a different EQ. Like I would have some rooms that were all flawed, but were flawed in a way that flatters different music. And I think because none of us have unlimited money, the real balance is actually finding a speaker that is, if it's flawed in a way that it makes everything you want to use it for acceptable. And
So
that's harder.
here's a question about this from Thibault. So Thibault says the biggest problem is that a great many speakers are unable to maintain a certain volume level in a home theater system without producing distortion or simple burn-in hell of aesthetic. So he wants everything. This is a really hard. You're asking a lot of a speaker. And frankly, the aesthetic part of it drives the price up tremendously. It costs a lot to build a really pretty cabinet. Now, if we're going to stay on what you were talking about here, Ben, the speaker that can do everything, budget not withholding. I know what I would pick, and I'm pretty sure I know of 2 that you would probably pick. Um, the one for Thibault, though, that can get loud in a not enormous room. We're not gonna ask of, like, a gigantic room, of a moderate room, not unakin to the rooms that we've done in Rooms in Review. What would you pick? I'm pretty sure we're gonna have the same answer. Be surprised if we didn't.
With no budget concern.
No budget concerns.
So a pair of special edition per listen S70s are
Yeah.
the like if I know I've got to go and buy one speaker and I've got to make it work for everything I want to listen to, and
Mhm.
I am never going to want more of it, I'm just going straight to the per listen S70 special.
And it's gotta tick the aesthetic box.
And they do, right?
And they do, yes.
Now, if I had more chance to put them in my room, see if I can make them work, like if I'm gonna mess around with them and see if I can get what I want, I would probably go with something more architecturally pretty and see if I could make it work. And if not, we're gonna fall back to the per listens that I know I'm gonna make work. But I might end up with something like a big Sonos Faber, something that's just
Really?
finished beautifully. Because when they sound great, they sound great. And if I can make it, I've got no data on them. I don't know. I couldn't predict what it would do. But something that's got that real luxury finish, I'm down for that.
So
But it would be a risk.
you'd go into the realm of no data, just play with them, see where they are. And frankly, ignorance is kind of bliss in a way. If you don't know, you don't know.
Right. And this comes down to can I get them on sale or return?
Oh,
We're in the industry. I can borrow anything I want, right? There's probably no speaker around that I can't
cheater.
phone someone and borrow. But that's not the case for everyone else. If I could get these on 4 weeks sale or return, cool. I'll stick them in and see if I can make myself happy with them. And there's loads of speakers that would fall into that category. If I've got to put down my money and buy one pair of speakers and I can't return them and I need to know they're going to work, I'm just getting the per listens. It's just that simple. And below that, I probably, and it's funny because I know that you also have a pair, right? And you've compared them back to back. Some expensive Kefs are probably going to be right there. Not necessarily because they're my favorite speakers in the world, but because I know that I'm going to make them work.
So the Kefs and the Perlissons, when you get to this level and you get to an objectively designed speaker, there's always trade-offs, right? You're trading performance for money. You can't have all the performance. You've got to decide which way you're gonna go. They're both objectively designed. They just take different approaches on the same concept, right? The Kef is a much wider dispersion speaker than the Perlisson is. The Perlisson's a more narrow, focused speaker. Having them side by side, they're both fantastic. I think it comes back to the question that I had in my living room of what is the better tool for the job that I'm asking of it, is what it's gonna come down to. Do
Right.
I need more of an art piece? I'm probably gonna pick the Kef Blade because it's just more abstract. It's more artsy than the Perlisson. Now, the Perlisson Black Edition that I also have down here is a gorgeous speaker, but it's doesn't have the same aesthetic as the Blade does.
I get it.
So, they're both fantastic in objective, but different ways. If I were to pick a speaker that I would want, if it was only a 2-channel environment and I could only pick 2, well, 1 pair, it's going to be probably the Ascendo Black Swans.
Right. So here's the thing. I do not have a room in my house where the Black Swans would work well.
Mhm.
So it would be pointless for me to take Black Swans. They wouldn't work in my right. I live in a really expensive part of the UK,
Mhm.
and it would be like using them for car audio. Like, there's no room in my house that's much bigger than the inside of my
I'm
car.
imagining
Right.
you just with the horns right here
Right.
next
So
to your head as headphones.
there are, and this is why it's really interesting, the difference between our favorite speakers, a realistic speaker, and the best speaker. The best speaker is the one that's right for the room.
Yes.
And when we do theater, people pay us to establish which is the best speaker for them to use in that room.
Mhm.
And that can be different to, like, oh, my favorite thing to look at or to play with or to mess around with, or the brand aspirations of buying a certain thing because it's pretty. Like, none of my friends are going to walk in a room and see a pair of Black Swans and be like, oh my God, that's the most beautiful thing. I need a pair of those in my life. They might with a pair of Kef blades. They might with, there's plenty of beautiful, well-finished
Hey, the
speakers.
forged carbon fiber version is really pretty, but it is still kind of ugly at the same time.
Right.
It's
I'm
a
not a
beautiful
fan of
ugly.
forged carbon generally. I think it looks messy, but that's my view of forged carbon, right? But
Now
none of my friends are going to see a pair of Black Swans. Now, if I'm building a big cinema and I have to put my money where my mouth is, Black Swans are definitely within one of 3 or 4 speakers that I could put into any big room and know they're going to work. Things like Mayer Sound Blue Horns, right? They're going to be right up there. But we're talking, these are incredible top end speakers. But Black Swans are not the best speaker for me in my home.
no.
They'd be terrible in my home.
Going back to my living room, it's funny you brought that up. The best speaker is what works the best in that particular environment, what you're trying to do. I've had the Black Swans up there, and they are for a two-channel experience, especially in the theater, in my theater, they're uncomparable in a lot of
Sure.
other to a lot of other things. I did not like them, and this does not mean they're a bad speaker. This is using the correct tool for the job. I did not like them nearly as much as Kef in my living room. Because, and I've talked about this before on different streams and different episodes, that room being so acoustically untreated, there is a lot of echo. There is a lot, it's a high decay. It's sound lingers in that room, even when you're talking. So your brain has this expectation of this is how this room should sound, right? And when we talk, we're it's not just here, it's everywhere, right? It's more of a wide dispersion sound. It's not directive.
Yeah.
And the Black Swan is highly directive. It's like firing a laser out of a driver. When you put that into my living room, if you really pay attention, you've been around the industry for a while, your brain goes, "This sounds good, but it doesn't sound natural."
Right.
And by going to the Kef, which has and I'm not limiting this just to Kef, this was my experience in there, to a wider dispersion speaker, it got to a point that it was much more natural. So it's very important to pick the correct speaker for whatever task you're trying to ask of it. If you're after a 2-channel and you need aesthetic, you're gonna wanna focus was it you that no, this is a Peter analogy. If you're going to buy a car, right, you're gonna make a list of all the things that you need of a car. I
Right.
need this number of seats, I need it to be this size, I need it to be potentially this level of acceleration, I need it to have this aesthetic, this cargo this, the huge list. But when people go buy speakers, they don't go in with lists, and it baffles
Right.
me that you have not defined what you need from a speaker. You have not figured out what do I need this speaker to do? A lot of people will just go into environments and be like, all right, I like the way this one sounds, but you're not playing it in the way that you're probably going to use it in your own environment. You're probably not sitting the same distance. You're not using potentially subs. You're not doing anything that is going to replicate that speaker's use case.
Yeah.
And if you don't do this, you're going to end up trying to use every speaker, every tool as a hammer. And using a screw gun or an impact as a hammer is a recipe for it to break. It's used for something entirely different. It still drives a fastener, but it does it in a different way in a different fastener. And if I try and use it to do the same thing as a hammer, it may work for a little bit, but it's not going to do it as well. And eventually it's going to fail.
Everything's a hammer if you're brave enough.
Yeah, sure.
No, and it's true. And so knowing what you need it to do is really important. And this comes back to the last comment. You know, you buy some black swans and some PSI active absorbers. Well, that's not going to work, right? It's not just for bass that's a problem. And what I don't want to do, like if I'm just building a 2-channel system, I could live without data because I think, you know, most hi-fi speakers don't have great data.
Hold on. But you could live without data, but I think your expertise, and I want to make this plainly clear, of being able to manipulate the speaker to know what you want, I can't say that that is necessarily true. And this is not me talking down to everybody. It's just Ben's been doing this for a long time. And he knows what he wants, and he knows the sound, and he knows the adjustments that he needs to make in order to change things to get him closer to that experience. So data is helpful, but I would bet you could listen to a speaker and go, it's probably doing this.
Yeah. So in my living room, I can move the speakers around. I can move some bits around. I don't want to move where my sofa is particularly. So I would be looking for a speaker that I can make work for me without having to try and fix it, right? I want something that just works in my space. And the problem with, I tried to put some swans in my living room. I mean, hey, you genuinely can't believe how small my living room is. I would be trying to fix them at all times. Like I could probably get a sweet spot that was, I'm not even sure I could get a sweet spot the width of my head, right? From how far away, like it just would not, nothing I could do would make them right for my room. So there is no best. There just isn't. There simply is not a best speaker. There is the right speaker for that room with your requirements and your taste and your environment and your furnishings. It's just not there's no way. If there was, we wouldn't need so many speaker brands. We could just literally say right now, oh, these are the 3 best speakers in the world. Use these for everything. But that's not the case. Like there is no right or wrong. There is no best. So the only way I can say I have a favorite is based on things I think are pretty, because otherwise it's going to be, do they work in my room? And I don't know until I get them there, especially with typical hi-fi speakers, because there is no data at all, really. Like none of them have got proper manufacturer and independently reviewed data that we can make a sensible choice. I'm lucky that I can get it from people, right? So would PMCs be on my list for my front room? I love PMCs. I put PMCs in my parents' house 20 odd years ago. They're still there. I know I can call Toby at PMC, and by the end of the day, I'll have the data on them. Okay, no one else can do that because they're not just going to call Toby and ask him. So we're in a different world to everyone else. But I know that a pair of PMCs are going to measure well. I know that once I get that data, I'll know exactly what to do with them. But if I just throw some PMCs in my living room, the bigger choice would be buying ones that are maybe too big. I would probably benefit with some stand mounts and not make so much low end, because then I haven't got to worry about how it behaves. So That's why I kind of said at the start, like some LS50s or some Perlis and S4Bs. There'll be some PMCs in that kind of price point, some monitor audios in that price point. Like there's things around sub $2,000 a pair that I could make work. And really, then it's down to which ones I think are prettiest because I'll make them work. And I would never approach theatre design like that. It's just the exact opposite of how I would do it.
We'll get to this next question. Scroob the Nookie says, so what would you run if you could only run a home theater setup in an open living room space, open to kitchen, roughly with a $5,000 to $6,000 budget with Atmos? If that's a $5,000 to $6,000 budget for the whole system, you've got to decide.
I'm going to really upset you with my answer.
You wouldn't?
No, I'm about to. I will come up with an answer, but I think it's going to be pretty unpalatable to you and everyone who hears me say it.
Well, what is it? Before I answer the question, what is it?
All in an open plan kitchen under $6,000. Probably start with a soundbar. Because like I just like if it's in a big open plan space, I actually just want it to kind of disappear. I've got kids, we've got pets. I don't think like I wouldn't have the budget to be picking lots of speakers and run cables and stuff, right? I honestly, at that price, I bet I'd end up with Sonos. Do I think it's the best? Absolutely not. Do I think it's what I'd end up doing if I only had $5,000 to $6,000 for me in an open plan space? Probably.
It's certainly an option, and I have told people, especially on AVS and Reddit, that come in and say, "Hey, I'm trying to put a home theater in this space," and you look at the space and you're thinking, "Man, this is your living room, and anything you do, or most things you do with speakers, is going to take away from the aesthetic of that space." Because remember, and a lot of enthusiasts go the opposite way on this, so I'm probably going to stir up some stuff. Remember, at least in my life, the living room is a multi-use space. It is not a dedicated home theater. And the aesthetic, to me, and especially my wife, matters. She does not want speakers that don't look like they fit. She tolerated the Kef blades because the Kef blades have that art feeling to them. But even then, you've got these monstrosities of speakers that are sitting in the living room. Now, you can have spaces that allow you to get away with more, that the speakers fit in certain parts. Like in a next house, I want to have a space that is more made to where I can put speakers and they look like they fit, floor standards at least. So I don't disagree with you, Ben, but on Scroob's question on if he was going to do something, because sometimes people just don't have the space for dedicated spaces, but they really want it, and that is what that space is primarily going to be used for. If I had to go all in on something like that, you're gonna have to make a compromise in some way for performance. It's gonna be, you got to choose between, do I want SPL at the compromise of fidelity, or do I want fidelity at the compromise of SPL? Because I don't think at that price point you're going to be able to get both. There's always a trade.
Sure.
If you want both, you got to spend more. There's no way around it. If you want to spend less, you got to pick one. Right? It's that triangle. You can only pick two. So for me, if I were choosing, and then it becomes even more difficult on if it's got to be aesthetically pleasing, well, then the SPL question's probably just going to go right out the window. Like, you can crumple that up and throw it away, because most aesthetic speakers at that price point are not going to have the capability of doing SPL. So for me, at that price point, I'm probably going, we've talked a lot about them during this stream, I'm probably going Kef.
Right. I'm just looking at a Concerto 5.1. So here's the other thing is, when budget's tight, I'd reduce channel count. So if I was going Kef, in the UK, I can pick up a Concerto 5.1, £2,500, right? So $3,000. So we're at half the budget, and you've got a Concerto 5.1. Add one more sub from that same range, add another one, a $1,000 AVR, a display, right? With like you, but I would rather get another sub than get Atmos channels at that point.
Atmos is great, but it's something that can be run later. And this is a problem, at least what I see in Americans is I need it all now. I don't want to wait. I need it all now. And I think with a system like this, Scroob, honestly, if you build it up over time, I think, let's say you get a 2.1 or even a 3.1 system to start with that $5,000 or $6,000. And then next year you add more to it. And then the following year you add more to it. I think you're going to get a better overall outcome. Even if you take it a little bit further and do 5.1 now and then add a Atmos later. And you could actually probably, if you're going to compromise on anything, compromise on the tops. Would you agree with that statement?
There's options, right? Like, and if I was taking a gut shot down at that price, I might put my money where, in the name of a designer I trust, right? So if I'm going complete gut shot, low cost, I might go looking for something like some of the ELACs that Andrew Jones designed, because he has a track record of turning out great speakers. He puts his name and effort to something very low cost. I might take a punt there. So I'm just going to look up and see how much they cost. But you've got options. ELAC B5s. I mean, how much are these things? They're not a lot of money. They're in the hundreds of pounds per pair. Like, they're not excessively expensive at all. There are things you could do. And, like when I talk about the low cost stuff I had as my first system, I know we're talking 20 years ago, but it was under $1,000 all in, like for a 5 point. Actually, I had no sub stuff, but I had to add the sub 3 months later when I could afford it. But pick your compromises, and maybe spending $3,000 on a Sonos set that doesn't need you to find a place to hold an AVR. You haven't got to worry about cabling. And then if it's not enough,
as an enthusiast,
save
though,
some
would you be
funds
happy
and do
with
it
that?
like do a bigger job later.
As an enthusiast, would you be happy with that, though?
I don't know. It's really hard for me.
I have a Sonos Arc in my living room, and I don't think I'd be happy with it. It's great if it's a multi-purpose room. If you're trying to go more dedicated, I don't think that's the pathway to go.
Right, and if you're going enthusiast, there is some other things intrinsically at play, whether we admit them or not. And one of them is knowing more than people who haven't done the research, right? Having a bit of you've got some ego in the game of having gone out and done some research. So sure, if your friends come around, you want to show them this system that you've gone out and you've put together the best system because you can, because it's your hobby, right? And Sonos isn't going to achieve that. Everyone's seen it. All your friends have probably got one in their living room as well. At that point, the Kefs, there's plenty of speakers that come in under a few £100 a pair. I'm not sure I'd even maybe spend all of that $6,000 though. I might go more basic. Like, it's hard, Ryan, because I haven't had to design a £6,000 cinema in about 10 years time, right? I just don't operate.
Here's what I would do. I really like Kef for this because I think they're a very neutral speaker. They bring a lot to the table, and they've got a lot of capability at I'm not going to call low price point because low is subjective, at a good price point for what they bring to the table. They're pretty speakers. The only thing they're not going to be able to do is they're not going to be able to hit really high SPL ranges without you blowing the drivers up. I would either do Kef Q concertos for my LCR, right? The problem with getting them in LCRs is the concertos come in a pair. So you'd get a pair and then probably a center channel. I would do those, or if I wanted to spend less, I would do the Q1s and then a center channel. And then the surrounds, I would do Q1s. And then for the tops, I would either honestly do Q1s, ceiling mounted using some type of wall mount, or in ceiling speakers, and then spend the rest on electronics and subs. And I think that's going to be a pretty solid system, not being constrained to placement. Like if you've got a speaker that's going to be a foot from you, I don't know that the Q1 is going to be the best option. If anything, you may, and this is something you really need to consider is a surround environment even going to work in that room? A lot of times less is more, and you can still have a kick-ass experience having a 2-1 or a 3-1 system. I mean,
so I've just, while you're talking, I have come up with my actual answer. Final answer. I'm willing to lock in an answer.
He's locking it in, ladies and gentlemen.
If I've got a $6,000 budget, it doesn't meet all the requirements, but we're going to have some compromises. I've worked it out.
What is it?
I'm getting some Perlisson R4Bs and a 2-channel amp. And I'm just getting a 2-channel stereo.
Okay.
And one day they're gonna become my surrounds, and I'm gonna buy the rest of the system. But with $5,000 or $6,000, honestly, the biggest smile you'll put on my face, Perlisson R4Bs and a decent $1,000 2-channel amp, and I'm gonna buy the rest later.
They do a really good job. They're an aesthetic speaker. I think you need to define what you're asking of the speaker first. What do you need from it? What are you going for? Do you need the aesthetic? If you don't need the aesthetic, there's some other options. I mean, you could do like I know we talk about these two brands, but that's because Ben and I have a ton of experience with them and then we really like them. They provide all the measurements. The other alternative would be something like an Ascendo the 10, right? In that environment. It's not as aesthetic, but it's wall mounted. You could then take those and turn them into your surrounds later.
So, right, problem for me with a 10 is they would be harder for me to just make them work right now. I can't toe them in and adjust them. If I'm just sticking them in an open plan room, I'm not building frame. I'm not going to put them on stands. They're not suited.
That's not true. You could put them on a VESA monitor mount and you'd have full play of whatever you could do. And they're close enough to the wall that SPIR
my wife, mate, you've not met my wife.
I didn't say for you. This is for Scroob. Come on.
I'm saying in my home, that's not going to fly.
Okay.
Like, of course you could. That wouldn't fly in my house.
All right.
So I'm sticking with the Perlissons for me. Honestly,
it's a fair answer. And I'm with you that when I came back, I'd said start with a 2-1 or 3-1 system and then build it out. Spend more on the speakers and subs and then add to it later. Especially if this is music focused, do not skimp. Less is more, especially with the 2-channel system. We started the stream this way. You can get away with less in a 2-channel music system than you can multi-channel. All right.
Yeah, so if I was doing it that way, it would have to be a speaker that I knew I could then repurpose later. So
yeah, absolutely.
I've not tried it. I don't think I've listened to R4S's, Perlisson R4S, which is their intentional surround design speaker. I'm not sure I've ever tried them as a 2-channel speaker. It would be interesting to see if I could make that work, and then they're nice and easy to move as surrounds later. But yeah, it's hard, right? These are not easy decisions for me to make. You know, you put me on the spot. If you ask me how I'm spending $100,000, we're in my wheelhouse. I can go. This is hard.
What you do every day,
right? This is hard for me.
He said it would be more movie focused. I don't know that my answer really changes unless you're really chasing the SPL stuff. If you're chasing SPL, you got to weigh, is the aesthetic compromise worth it? Because you're going to have to give up some aesthetics to chase if you want the same level of performance with the SPL. If you need the SPL and you're okay with starting with 3-1 up front, I'm going to stand by the Ascendo stuff. I think they can do the music and the multi-channel better,
Now
and they're
we
going
right.
to outpace those per listens in SPL
The
capability.
challenge for me, if we're making it really movie focused, is I'm going to want to, and it's an open plan space, I'm going to want to fill in that bottom end. So maybe half the budget is going on subwoofers already.
Yeah,
Like, it takes some Ascend over 12 subs. A pair of those, we're
there's
probably
a
at
lot
over
of good
$3,000
options.
already, right?
There's a lot of good options in that price range. Like I was looking at, well, no, that's still the same amount of money. So I was like, oh, I was looking at this brand yesterday, and I was like, no, that's still the same amount of money. Do not skimp on your subs, ladies and gentlemen. The subs, I argue with people, and we're going to answer one more question, then we're going to have to wrap it up. I argue that you should spend as much, if not more, on subs than you do on your speakers.
In a film-based system, possibly, right.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, you don't need as much low-end grunt, but man, the stuff that you can get with I use my theater primarily for 2-channel, and having those subs, it is just marvelous. So I don't know them. I don't think my answer would change.
I think at $6,000, if you're music focused, you've got to put more budget towards the main speakers, because I think otherwise you can get the bass right and you're really compromised on what else you can put with it. And there's a lot
That's
more to
fair.
music than just below 100 hertz.
He says he'd be going with 2 SVS subs. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
2 of
Scroob,
them, 4 of them, 6 of them.
8 of them, whatever. Scroob, send me a message and let's work through this. Even if you don't get anything from Ben or I, let's work through this and make sure that you know what you're getting and what the expectation should be. All right, we got one more question, and this comes from Sir Judge. The conversation came at exactly the right time for me. I'm currently planning out a system to work alongside my current KEF CI 3160 RL LCRs, looking to use CI 200Rs for the other 16 channels. Budget. So he's got KEF for our subs. I don't know what he means because those aren't subs. 12 channels, not 16. The CI 200R, aren't those in ceilings?
They are round, so I think they are all in ceilings. Yeah, I think the R means round, doesn't it, on Kef's naming?
Unless you could use them in wall. They have a square plate, so you could do them anywhere. I don't know how I feel about that.
I think
a lot. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think, right, that's becoming an all KEF system. I'll be honest, I wouldn't use KEF subs.
I don't think the 3160 are subs.
No, they're not. They're the LCR, right? They're fine. They're like their THX. He hasn't mentioned subs in there. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't do KEF subs.
Like, if you're keeping it as a fully KEF system, great. But I would not be trying to squeeze KEF subs in I wouldn't be thinking to myself, I want to keep this whole product family the same. Yeah. I need to go with KEF subs. That would not be a consideration for me at all.
Sig, I'm actually going to have to cut this off because I got to go deal with my dog. I can hear her in the background. But we need a lot more information with this. There's to pick that number of speakers and stuff and placements and sub. You're talking about adding 12 channels. There's a lot of conversation that needs to happen to make sure that what you're trying to do is going to meet the expectation that you have. So send both Ben and I a message. You can CC both of us. Our email information is in the description. And we can go through this because I want to make sure that you're going to get what you think you're going to get. And so I guess the 3160s are subs. They're in-wall subs. And that even more so there, I really want to make sure that that's what you're after. They could be the right choice depending on the aesthetic that's needed. Sometimes you're making a compromise. Maybe all the subs are really close to you. I just need to have more information in order to make those determinations and make sure that you're going down the right pathway. but my dog's flipping her lid upstairs, so I've got to wrap this up. But we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes. So we'll be revisiting the room in review that we missed on Thursday.
Sorry.
Because Ben blew us off like a loser. But we'll be
It was
revisiting
important.
that. And we will see you guys then. Let us know what you think about more of these topics instead of the, things to think about when you're building a home theater. I was just trying something new. The other ones weren't doing as well as I thought they would. So maybe you guys like the more impromptu, simpler topics, which is fine. We don't have to prepare as much. So anyway, guys, we'll wrap it up there. Sorry to cut it off, but my dog's flipping her lid. So we'll wrap it up from here, and we will